Hello everyone, I am Prajul Vaman Ghatul and today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, that is the cerebrum. It is a very important part of the brain. So let's start the topic and let's continue with the video. Cerebrum is the seat of intelligence. It is the part of the brain that provides us with the ability to read, write and to speak and to make calculations and compose music. It also helps us to remember the past, plan for the future and imagine things that has never existed before. The cerebrum consists of the cerebral cortex, internal region of cerebral white matter, and a grey matter nuclei deep within the white matter. Now let's discuss the cerebral cortex, that is the part of the brain of the cerebrum. The cerebral cortex is a region of the grey matter that forms the outer rim of the cerebrum. It is only 2 to 4 millimeter thick, and the cerebral cortex contains billions of neurons arranged in distinct layers. During the embryonic development, when the brain size increases rapidly, the grey matter of the cerebral cortex enlarges much faster than the deeper white matter. So, as a result of this faster enlargement of the grey matter, the cortical region rolls and folds itself. These folds are called gyri, G-Y-R-I, gyri. These folds or gyri are singularly known as gyrus or convolutions. The deepest grooves between the folds are known as fissures. And the deepest grooves are known as fissures and the shallower grooves are known as sulci, S-U-L-C-I, sulci. The most prominent fissure is the longitudinal fissure. It separates the cerebrum into the right and the left hemispheres. These hemispheres are called as cerebral hemispheres. Within the longitudinal fissure between the cerebral hemisphere is the flux cerebri. The cerebral hemispheres are connected internally by corpus callosum, which is a broad band of white matter containing axons that extend between the hemispheres. Here in this figure you can see the gyrus, that is the folds, and sulcus are the shallow grooves. Okay, so let's see what are the different lobes of cerebrum. A cerebral hemisphere can be further subdivided into several lobes. These lobes are named after the bones that cover them. These are the frontal, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe and the occipital lobe. Here you can see this is the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe and the occipital lobe in the superior view. In the superior view we cannot see the temporal lobe. So this is the frontal lobe, this is the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe and the temporal lobe. We can see all the lobes in the right lateral view. There is a central sulcus. This central sulcus is present here, and this sulcus it separates the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe. There is a major gyrus, that is the precentral gyrus. This precentral gyrus it is present immediate anterior to the central sulcus, contains the primary motor area of the cerebral cortex. Another major gyrus is the postcentral gyrus. This postcentral gyrus, it is located immediately posterior to the central sulcus. It contains the primary somatosensory area of the cerebral cortex. There is lateral cerebral sulcus. This sulcus separates the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe, and the parieto-occipital sulcus, this separates the parietal lobe and the occipital lobe. There is a fifth part of the cerebrum, that is the insula. This insula cannot be seen at the surface of the brain because it lies within the lateral cerebral sulcus, deep to the parietal, frontal and temporal lobes. Okay, so now let's talk about the cerebral white matter. The cerebral white matter consists primarily of myelinated axons in 3 types of tracts. The first is association tracts. Here in the image you can see the association tracts. These association tracts contain axons that conduct nerve impulses between gyri in the same hemisphere. The second is the commissural tracts. These commissural tracts contain axons conduct impulses from gyri in one cerebral hemisphere to corresponding gyri in the other cerebral hemisphere. There are three important groups of commissural tracts. These are the corpus callosum, which is the largest fiber bundle in the brain containing about 300 million fibers. Others are the anterior commissure and the posterior commissure. Another type of tract of the myelinated axons in the cerebral white matter is the projection tract. This projection tract contains axons that conduct nerve impulses from the cerebrum to lower parts of the CNS, that is the thalamus, brainstem or spinal cord, or from the lower part of the CNS to the cerebrum. An example is the internal capsule. As you can see in this photo, it is a thick band of white matter that contains both ascending and descending axons. So now let's see another part of the cerebrum, that is the basal nuclei. Deep within each cerebral hemisphere, there are three nuclei that are the masses of grey matter. These are collectively termed as basal nuclei. These basal nuclei were historically called as basal ganglia. Two of the basal nuclei lie side by side just lateral to the thalamus. Here you can see the thalamus, and just beside the thalamus there are two basal nuclei. They are putamen and globus pallidus. The globus pallidus is closer to the thalamus and putamen is closer to the cerebral cortex. Together, this globus pallidus and putamen are referred as lentiform nucleus. There is a third basal nuclei, that is the caudate nucleus. This caudate nucleus has a large head connected to a smaller tail by a long comma-shaped body. Together, the lentiform nucleus and the caudate nuclei are known as corpus stratum. Corpus stratum refers to the striated appearance of the internal capsule as it passes among the basal nuclei. Nearby structures that are functionally linked to the basal nuclei are the substantia nigra of the midbrain and the subthalamic nuclei of the diencephalon. Axons from the substantia nigra terminate in the caudate nucleus and putamen. The subthalamic nuclei interconnect with the globus pallidus. The claustrum. It is a thin sheet of grey matter that is situated lateral to the putamen. It is considered by some to be a subdivision of basal nuclei. The function of claustrum in humans has not been clearly defined, but it may be involved in visual attention. The basal nuclei receive input from the cerebral cortex and provide output to motor parts of the cortex via the medial and ventral group nuclei in the thalamus. In addition, the basal nuclei have extensive connections with one another. A major function of the basal nuclei is to help regulate initiation and termination of movements. Activity of neurons in the putamen precedes or anticipates body movements. Activity of neurons in the caudate occurs prior to the eye movements. The globus pallidus helps regulate the muscle tone required for specific body movements. The basal nuclei also control subconscious contractions of skeletal muscles. Example include automatic arm swings while walking and true laughter in response to a joke. In addition to influencing motor functions, the basal nuclei have other roles. They help to initiate and terminate some cognitive processes, attention, memory, and planning. It may act with the limbic system to regulate emotional behaviors. Disorders such as Parkinson's disease, obsessive compulsion disorder, schizophrenia, and chronic anxiety are thought to involve dysfunction of circuits between the basal nuclei and the limbic system. We just used the term limbic system, so now let's see what the limbic system is. The limbic system governs emotional aspects of behavior. Encircling the upper part of the brainstem and the corpus callosum is the ring of structures on the inner border of the cerebrum and floor of the diencephalon that constitutes the limbic system. The main components of the limbic system are as follows. The first is the limbic lobe. It is a rim of cerebral cortex on the medial surface of each hemisphere. It includes cingulate gyrus, which lies above the corpus callosum, and the parahippocampal gyrus, which is the temporal lobe below. The hippocampus is a portion of the parahippocampal gyrus that extends into the floor of the lateral ventricle. The dentate gyrus lies between the hippocampus and the parahippocampal gyrus. The amygdala is composed of several groups of neurons located close to the tail of the caudate nucleus. The septal nuclei are located within the septal area formed by the regions under the corpus callosum and the paraterminal gyrus. The mammillary bodies of the hypothalamus are the two round masses close to the midline near the cerebral peduncles. Other parts like the olfactory bulbs, anterior nucleus and the medial nucleus and etc. are labeled in the diagram. With this, we conclude our session. Thank you for listening. I hope you understood it, and if you liked it, please share it with your friends and spread knowledge. Thank you.